Okay, everybody. So my name is Ross. I'm a tutor on the west side for Seeds. So what we're going to do today is a worksheet that you would see in our classrooms on adjectives and adverbs. Some of you may have used this before. If you haven't, I'm sure you're kind of used to seeing what these worksheets look like. This would just be like you and me sitting at a table going through it. A lot of the time I'll work with students at Seeds and they'll already have done a packet like this, and we'll just go over it just to make sure that you're on the right track for figuring out what an adjective is, or just kind of getting a refresher on what an adjective is and what an adverb is. So what I'm going to attempt to do here is just go through some of the pages here, talk a little bit about the instructions, and then go through some of the examples. And then I should have access to some drawing tools, pen, and I'll just go through them as we go. And if you need to pause or rewind, if you're watching the recording, you can do that. So the first thing that you want to look at here is that we're talking about adjectives. So the best way to think about an adjective is just here on the screen, is that it's a word that describes a noun or pronoun. So you can see they have a picture of an apple. So it would be the apple is the noun, and then what is the apple, or what kind of an apple is it? It's juicy and it's red. So those are two adjectives that are describing the apple. Colors are a good way to determine an adjective. So another one there, the second underlined, is a second chance. So a chance at something is a noun. What kind of a chance do you have? Maybe you're playing a game and you have a second or third or fourth chance at something. The last one is babies. Maybe your neighbor had some babies, so maybe they had 4. So that is how many. So if you're describing how many, 6 baseballs or 3 apples, that number is an adjective. So then another just brief instruction here is that adjectives are used in comparing 2 objects. And there's a couple rules. The first one is if it has 1 or 2 syllables, you add ER, and it's called the comparative form. That one is kind of easier to remember because it has the word compare in it. So you have comparative form. So you're comparing 2 things. If you have 3 or more objects, you add EST, and that is the superlative form. So I always think of it as like super meaning the best. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the best of something, but you think of it, the easy way for me to remember it is the super, whether it's good or bad. The superlative is going to be the best or worst or something like that. And you'll see some of the examples when we go through it. So the first one is her score was lower than my score. So you're comparing 2 things, right? You're comparing your score and her score. So that means you're going to add ER. If you're comparing the whole class, let's say there's 20 people in the class, then that would be the superlative because you're comparing 3 or more objects. So that would be her score was the lowest in the class. So that's how you figure out if you're doing lower or lowest. That's a word with 1 or 2 syllables. So that was the word low. The other one is if the adjective is a longer word, and this one is patient. So you use more or less to compare to. So this example down here says Lois is more patient than I am. So 2 things, right? You're comparing Lois and yourself. So you would use more patient. If there are 3 or more things where it says I am the least patient of the 6 of us, you're going to use most or least. So I am the least patient or I am the most patient. So you have to think of 2 things. One is how many syllables the word has, and then 2, how many things is it comparing? So we'll go through some of the examples here and you'll get used to it. So let me try the drawing tools. There we go. So the first one, you just underline the adjective. So I'll do the first couple, and then if you want to pause it and go through, there are 10 of them on here. So the first is, did you see a small brown dog run past? So if we were in class sitting next to each other, I would probably ask you to find the noun first. So the noun is going to be like a person, place, or thing. So I would put an N over dog, and hopefully you can see this. So the noun is the dog. So what kind of a dog is it? It's small and it's brown. So those are our adjectives for number 1. Number 2, what is the person, place, or thing in number 2? It's the third time I've missed the early bus. So it's the bus. Oops, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have underlined that. Let's see. How do I get out of this? I forget how I do that. There we go. Well, you know what I mean. Oh, wait, erase. There we go. So we had dog as the noun, small, brown. This one would be, the noun would be the bus. Well, what kind of a bus? It was early. That is that's the adjective. I think we could also do, it's the third time. So noun would be time, and then what time was it? It was the third time that you missed the early bus. I'll do the third one with you too. The local park was littered with empty wrappers and rusty cans. There's a bunch of different nouns in this one. You have the park is a noun, empty wrappers, so wrappers would be a noun, and cans would be a noun. So what kind of a park was it? It was our local park. What kind of wrappers were they? They were empty. And then what kind of cans? They were rusty cans. So that's how you would go through these. And why don't I'll do through number 4 and number 5, and then if you're watching this on your own, you can pause it and then do 6 through 10, and then I'll go through 6 through 10 and I'll identify the best that I can the adjectives and the nouns. So let's do that. So number 4 says the new bulb seems brighter than the old one. So the noun here is bulb, and then 1. Next is you're looking for the adjectives. So what kind of a bulb is it? Well, it's new. 1 would be referring to another bulb. So what kind of a bulb is that one? It's old. I'm confused with brighter. I'm trying to think of what brighter might be. Maybe you're looking at that too, because that's describing something. So I'm not exactly sure if that's, I think it's an adjective. So that might be something just to look at. I'm not going to be 100% correct on these. So you just want to make sure that you're running through them and that you're following the rules up at the top. So the only one that I'm a little bit confused on is brighter. That's all. So number 5 says, is the home team in gray uniforms? So let's look for the nouns. Again, the noun would be person, place, thing, something like that. So team is a noun. Uniforms would be a noun. What kind of team? It's the home team. What color is the uniforms? Or color is a good adjective. Keep in mind, pretty much when you see a color, it's going to be describing something. So if it's describing it, it is an adjective. So it would be gray. So what I want you to do here is pause it and try 6 through 10 on your own, and then come back and go over it with me when I do 6 through 10 and see how you did. So I'll give you a second to pause it. Okay, so number 6, hopefully you've gone through 6 through 10 on your own. and tried it out. So again, we're putting an N for noun, and then we're underlining adjectives. So number 6 says, come to an important meeting on Friday. So the noun that we are looking for here would be meeting. And then, well, what kind of a meeting is it? It's an important meeting. Number 7, a nearby discount store claims to have the cheapest prices in town. Let's go through and look for the nouns. So a store is the noun. Prices, noun. What kind of prices? Well, cheapest prices, right? What kind of a store was it? It's a discount store. And not only that, what distance is that store? Well, it's nearby. So you have a nearby discount store. That's describing the store itself. Number 8, a kind passerby helped fix the flat tire. So the noun here would be a passerby and tire. You look at passerby, well, what kind of a passerby is it? What type of person is it? And it's a kind. So somebody that's nice. And what kind of a tire is it? It would be a flat tire. Again, you're looking for words that describe nouns. So I'm just putting an N over the nouns because it helps to find the noun first. Then you can figure out what words are describing the noun. Trust me, you want to find the nouns first. And the best way that I've seen to do it working with you guys is putting a little N over the noun. That sometimes works. Number 9 says, what is the highest peak in the Rockies? So again, we're going to look for the noun. So the noun would be peak. So that just means a mountain. What is the highest mountain? And we're looking for, well, what kind of peak? And that would be highest. Last, number 10, leave wet umbrellas and muddy shoes at the door. So we're going to look for nouns. So umbrellas, shoes, and there are other nouns, right? Door is a noun, but it doesn't tell us, it's not describing the door. So we don't have to worry about it. We're just looking for nouns that are being described. So what kind of shoes? They're muddy. What kind of umbrellas? They are wet. Now, if this said at the front door, right, then we could say, okay, that's our adjective. But it doesn't tell us what kind of door. So that's why I didn't put an N over door, because it's not describing it to us. Not describing it to us. Okay. So I'll leave these up for a second if you want me. If you want, you can pause it if you're watching the recording. If you want to write these down somewhere, you can do that too. You can take a screenshot or something like that. And then in order to move on, I need to erase, I think, the drawing tool so I can get to the next page. So let me erase those. And then we're going to do comparisons with ER or EST. So this is what we were talking about before. This will be the second part of the lesson today when we're looking at those comparisons. So again, remember there are a couple rules that you have to follow. The first is how many syllables does the word have? So the first example here is the word wet. So wet has one syllable. So it says if the adjective has one syllable, a short vowel, and a single consonant, double the final consonant. So these are just a couple of the adjectives that we'll run across that might change their spelling. So when we get down to number 1 through 6, it's kind of like following a rule book, and you have to kind of go up and figure out what rule applies. So the second rule is talking about if the adjective ends in an E, drop the E. So that example is large. So large ends in E. And remember, we're doing comparative and superlative. Remember, comparative is when we're comparing two things, and superlative is when we're comparing three or more. So if we have like this and a pen, you would say, well, you have two things, right? So you would say, which one is larger? Because we only have two things. If I add a third thing in here, like my glasses case, now we have three things, right? So you're going to say, which one is largest? Because we have three or more. That's the superlative. So you kind of have to, when you're trying to pick out the adjective, you have to remember that you have to remember how many things you're comparing. Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 12? Is it 900? So keep that in mind, and I'm sure we'll have some practice when we go through it. And then it has some special adjectives where you have to change the entire word. So good. So if you have an apple and you say, this apple is good, and then you try another one, you don't say this apple is gooder, right? That doesn't make any sense. So you would say this apple is better. And then if you have two more apples, let's say you eat 4, you're not going to say that, oh, this one is the goodest. You say it's the best. So those are special, well, I don't know what you want to call them. They're special examples that you have to keep in mind. So I'm sure they'll test us on that when we go through 1 through 14. Okay, so again, you can pause this at any time. I will bring up my pen. I'll do a couple of these on my own, and then you can pause and try them out on your own. So this says, write the correct form of each adjective. So it says comparative form of sunny. So we have to decide what form is it asking us. It's going to ask us either the comparative or the superlative. And then we have to look at our rules. Let me get rid of this here. So the rules would be so sunny, right? So this says if the adjective ends in a consonant and Y, change the Y to I. That's the rule that we have to follow for this one. Let me show you. Sunny, right? We have to use sunny for this rule because it ends in an N and a Y. So that's the consonant and the Y. So we change the Y to I. Comparative form is right here. So they changed lovely to lovelier. So the comparative form of sunny would be, and pardon my writing, I'm doing it with my mouse, sunnier. Sunnier. That's what they asked us to do. They said the comparative form of sunny, and we followed the rule, which is sunnier. We're going to do the next one, the superlative form of good. Superlative form of good. This one they did for us. Look. Good, better, best. This is the comparative form, and this is the superlative form. So the superlative form of good is best. Remember, superlative is when you're comparing 3 or more. So let's say you're looking at cars. You have 5 cars. Which one is the best? If you have 2, you would say which one is better, right? You wouldn't look at 5 cars and say which one is better. You would say which one is best because you're comparing more than 2. That's where it comes into play. So the next one would be the superlative form of sad. The superlative form of sad. Okay, so this one here is, let's change choose our pen color. We'll change it to green. sad. So let's bring sad up to this rule right here. It's the top rule. If the adjective has one syllable, a short vowel, and a single consonant, double the final consonant. What is the final consonant in sad? It's D. So let's make our double D. Sadder. Okay, did you catch my mistake? What form? We're using superlative, not comparative. So superlative adds est. So this should be, right? It shouldn't be sadder, it should be saddest. Superlative, again, is comparing 3 or more. So let's pretend we're looking at a picture of 6 kids. Let's say they're 5-year-olds. They all have frowns on their faces. So you would say, well, which one looks the saddest? If you had a picture of only two kids, you would probably say which one is sadder. That's the comparative form. So you have saddest for more than 3 or more, and comparative for 2. So I'm going to ask you now to pause and do 4, 5, and 6 on your own, and then come back when you're ready, and we'll go over the answers. So I'll give you a minute to pause if you need to. Okay, so we're going to do 4, 5, and 6, the comparative form of peaceful. So I want to just let you into how I do this, and you can, I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong, but this is how my thought process is for these. So number 4 says comparative form of peaceful. So the first thing that I do is, okay, we're doing comparative form, so that means 2 things. We're comparing 2 things. Peaceful. Now we have to find the rule. What rule are we going to follow for peaceful? And it is, hold on, I don't think it's on this page. So you would probably come up here. Remember from this first page, and sorry about all the drawings, but this is if the adjective is a longer word, 2 or more, you can use more or less to compare it. So it is a longer word, right? It's 2 or more syllables. The word would be, and let me get, there we go. The word is peaceful. So that's 2 or more words. So imagine you're looking at 2 paintings. Which one is blank peaceful? What would you put in there? Which one is blank peaceful? When you're comparing just 2, the rule says you're going to use the word more. Use more to compare 2 things. Use the word more. So if I get this down here, I can grab the pen, and it would be, the comparative form would be more. And I'm not going to write the word peaceful. I'll just put a P to save time, but more peaceful. Comparative form, okay? Comparative form. Number 5 says comparative form of wise. So wise is a short word, so we don't have to go up to the other rules. We would do, if the adjective ends in an E, drop the E. So this is the rule we're looking at for number 5. Large becomes larger or largest. So what form are we looking at? We're looking at comparative form. So wise becomes wiser. Okay? Number 6 is the superlative form of perfect. So the superlative form of perfect. That means we need the rule from the first page. I went through these rules here and none of them apply to the word perfect from what I can see. So we can go up here and we're looking for the superlative form. So it says, if the adjective is a longer word, perfect, use more or less to compare two things, use most or least to compare three. We are going to do the superlative form, which is EST. Wait, hold on. I think I'm doing this wrong. Superlative form of perfect. What is the rule that applies to this one? Maybe you guys, I mean, it's not going to be perfecter or perfectest, right? Those don't sound right. So it would be you're comparing, so more or less, or most or least. So superlative form would be most, because you're comparing. Superlative is telling us that we're comparing more than three things. So I think this is right. Most perfect. Although I don't know how you can be more or most perfect, but if we're following the rules, I think we did this right. So most perfect would be how to do number 6. So if you need to look at these, hopefully I'm right, and you can take some screenshots if you need to. And then we'll wrap up the lesson by just doing numbers at the bottom. We'll wrap up by doing 7 through 14. So I'll clear off these things. So the last part here is reading each sentence. If the underlined adjective is not correct, write the proper form. If there is no mistake, write correct. I'll do 7, 8, and 9 on my own, and then I'll leave you to do 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 on your own, and then we'll go back and we'll look at them. So 7 is, where is the most deepest part of Lake Erie? So for me, I'm just looking at this, and there is no need for, here, let's do red. There is no need for the word most in this one. You don't need most deepest, because when you say the word deepest, it's already clear that you're describing the deepest part of Lake Erie. So here on the line, I think they would want you to write just deepest. Deepest. And again, I'm not here to claim that I'm 100% correct all the time, right? So if you have questions or anything, you can write those down, and you can reference this worksheet. It's the Adjectives and Adverbs worksheet, Tab M, and then it can be brought up at some other point. So I would say, if you're talking to somebody, you would say, where is the deepest part of Lake Erie? So this one is not correct. Number 8 says, this summer is more drier than last summer. So we're comparing two things, right? We're just comparing two things, this summer and last summer. So that would be the comparative form. We would not be doing the superlative form. We would just be doing the comparative form. Okay. So again, for this one, if I grab my pen, I would say this summer is just drier. You don't have to put the word more. It would just be drier. I'll try to write fast. So this summer is drier than last summer. And remember, let's say we're comparing 3 summers. Let's say we're comparing 3. It would be this summer is, I don't know, it would be the driest. Let's say we get to this summer and it hardly rains. You could say this summer is the driest summer in 10 years, because you're comparing 10 summers, right? So if you're comparing 3 or more things, driest would be the right word, because driest is the superlative form of the word dry. All right, I'll do number 9, and then you can pause it and do the rest on your own. She is more hopeful than I am about this job. That one seems correct to me. So you're comparing two things, she and yourself. She and yourself. So when you have the comparative form, you would just go right here. More, many more, most. She is more hopeful. So more is the comparative form of that word. So this would be fine. You just write correct. So I'm not going to write correct. I'll just put a C next to it. Pause it, do 10 through 14, and then we'll run through those quickly so we can end the session. Okay, 10 through 14. So again, we're looking for what form. It's comparative or superlative, and that will guide us toward that we're getting the adjective right. Imagine you're going through a river, right? And it's going to split off into two ways. If you don't pick the right way, you're not going to get the answer right. So the first thing you have to do is decide, is it branching off to comparative or is it branching off to superlative? You need to know that. If you pick the wrong branch of the river, you're not going to get it right. So the more you practice these, you'll start to see, okay, this is comparative or this is superlative. You'll get used to it. So number 10 says, did your cold get worser overnight? So it's not comparing really anything. It's just comparing maybe tonight to last night. So really we're just comparing two things. So it wouldn't be worser. It would just be, look up here, it would be worse because we are using the comparative form because we're only comparing two things. Did your cold get worse overnight? 11 says, what a clever move he made. That one, what a clever move. It's really not quite sure how many things that's comparing. It's probably just one. So that's describing his move. So maybe it's a basketball move or something. So it's just clever. So this one is correct. It's just clever. It's just the normal form of the adjective. Jesus was the more loyal employee we ever hired. How many employees are they talking about here? 1, 2, 30? Doesn't tell us, right? So let's say it says it was the more loyal employee we ever hired. Maybe they've hired 50 employees. Is more the correct form? No, because we're looking for superlative. We're looking for the best out of all the employees. So look up here. It would not be more, it would be most, because most is the superlative. Most is the superlative. So we would do most right here. 2 more to go. Choose the most prettiest bouquet you can find. I'm not too sure with the rule of this one. I know that this is very similar to number 7 and number 8 because prettiest is already the superlative form. You don't need to add most. Choose the prettiest bouquet. So you would just write in the word prettiest. I'm just going to put a PR. So again, prettiest bouquet. So there's 500 bouquets in this store, bouquets of flowers, right? Many, many, many different kinds of bouquets. So you want to make sure that your adjective is in the superlative form. Here it already is, prettiest, EST, right? If you put EST, that's the superlative form. Last, there has to be a more better way to do this. This again is similar to number 7 and 8 and 13, where there's an extra word. You don't need the word more. There has to be a better way to do this. There has to be a better way to do this. And if we look up here, here's the word better. If I use the drawing tool, it's right here. So if it's the word better, it means it's in comparative form. So we must be comparing 2 or less. There has to be a better way to do this. Maybe you're building, I just bought a table at Lowe's for my deck. So maybe I'm building it on the ground and I mess it up. And maybe I'm like, okay, there has to be a better way to do this, right? I wouldn't say there has to be a best way to do this. It would say there has to be a better way to do it. That would be my guess for this answer. So what we've done here is we've worked on, let me clear off the tools here. We're working in adjectives, tab M, adjectives and adverbs, number 7. So we talked about adjectives. We did these numbers 1 through 10. And then we talked about practicing superlative and comparative forms. The rest of this is just talking about, and I'll scroll down here if you want to pause and try this page on your own. This has 1 through 15. Talks about 2 adjectives describing nouns. Talks about don't repeat any adjectives, and then use each adjective in a sentence. So this is good practice for you for practicing your adjectives. And we didn't get to adverbs, but I'll make a note and I'll do this one in a future session. So we'll start on page 59. Okay, thanks.